Hey guys, Tom Derzypolski here with Strong Like David. I told you I was going to be hosting a very special interview with one heck of a leader, and I'm really excited to be able to spend some time on Zoom with Chad Williams. Chad has an incredible history, and I'm gonna kind of list some of that experience in life and in the world, in his walk with God. But what most of us are interested in are probably his experience in the U.S. Navy. I told Chad I was a Navy corpsman, and I joined the Navy because I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That's all I ever wanted to do. You know, I was like 18 years old and pretty fired up. And then my life took me down a different path for several different reasons. But like we've learned in the story of King David, he started off in the field as a shepherd boy, kind of put out to pasture, right, Chad? And hey, you're the youngest son. Why don't you go out there and watch those sheep while I teach these older guys how to lead? But God kind of took that time and prepared him for something. So while never got my Trident, it's kind of cool to sit here and chat with somebody who has achieved that and sort of that. So Chad, it's a real pleasure to speak with you today, man. Thanks for being with us.
Super stoked to be on here with you. And just as I was thinking about it, when you're sharing there that David, he spent that time with the sheep before ultimately God would use, little David to go and take on the giant Goliath and chop off his head. I thought, hey, you know what? The same thing happened with Moses. Moses spent 40 years out in the back of the desert following around some sheep before he got that call from God to do what he always wanted to do and be the one to deliver his people and
That's
be
awesome.
the one that delivered that weaponized message of let my people go.
Yeah. It's funny. I talk about some of the spiritual weapons because I think a lot of times as men, there's several aspects of Strong Like David. We talk about leadership development at work, like how to handle conflict and deal with things. But I tend to pivot back on some really strong leadership lessons in the Bible. So I've often used the phrase like the tactical weapon that's found in the fruit of the Spirit. So if you're going to engage someone, if you think about pulling from those and deploying those, how effective that actually makes you as a leader. It's the Bible's really kind of chock full of some really practical, leadership stuff. So
Yeah, and Paul, who wrote more books in the New Testament than any other, he certainly loved depicting, the faith as being a sort of combat faith, putting on the
right.
armor of God. No soldier that's engaged in warfare entangles himself with the affairs of this world that he may please him who enlisted him. So it's all throughout the
That's awesome.
scriptures. And then some of my favorite quotes, like by C.S. Lewis, he talks about how this world is enemy occupied territory. He says, enemy occupied territory, that is what this world is. But Christianity is the story about how our rightful king has landed, you might say in disguise. And now he's calling us all to take part in his great campaign of sabotage. And so I don't know about you, but that really resonates with me. The idea of taking part in a divine campaign of sabotage, which is just sabotaging the plans of the ultimate terrorist out there, Satan. He's a suicide bomber strapped. We've read the back of the book, but like any suicide bomber out there, he's not content with just taking himself out. His goal is to take out as many people with him as he possibly can in the process. And we need to make that personal, right? That's our
Yeah.
families going after. Those are our friends, our coworkers. But God has armed us with a weaponized message. So Moses had that "let my people go" message, and it set captive people free. Well, there's a lot of people in the captivity and bondage of sin under the rule of the God of this age, which is Satan. So he's like the modern day Pharaoh. But we
That's
have a
right.
sort of "let my people go" message to share with people, which is the gospel message. It's the greatest weapon we have to charge the kingdom of darkness with. And so,
You
yeah,
know
I
what's
love the
awesome?
pictures.
If we could have more men, I think some men come into Strong Like David and they understand there was some historical figure named King David, and they've heard David and Goliath, so like, hoorah, I want some of that. But they haven't been to church ever or maybe in a long time. And I love watching men discover that, living an authentic, life the way God designed us to be strong warriors, to stand up for those that are weak, to build each other up, to watch each other's back. The idea of being an armor bearer to one another, things of that nature. I think I've had more guys reach out and say, I didn't know that being in what they end up calling it, kind of a secret Bible study could be so tough, like I want some more of that. And
Right.
it's kind of cool. I think the days of of men sitting quiet in the pew, because they had to on Sunday, are hopefully behind us for many
I
people.
I hope so. Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time for men to, stand up and prepare themselves like men of God, right? And
Hmm.
to follow the ultimate leader who is a servant leader himself. And so talk about, covering each other's backs, Satan, I'm sorry, Jesus, the savior, he really
Hmm.
led the way
Right.
by this example of washing his disciples' feet. He's saying
Absolutely.
that he didn't come into the world to be served. Like what? Like the world was made through him, and without him, nothing was made that was made. You would think that everything is supposed to be serving him right now.
Yeah.
But he says the Son of Man didn't come into the world to be served, but to serve. And so he made himself this servant, a servant leader, investing into those that were around him, taking in, the 70, the 12, and even his inner circle, washing their feet. And what came out of that is, something that I think every leader wants. And, money can't really truly buy. And what it is this like real genuine loyalty.
Right.
So that when he had a task for them, like, here's what I want you guys to go do, spread this message throughout, the ends of the earth, and that you're gonna have to put your life on the line in the process of doing it. They
Hmm.
weren't just willing to do it to collect a paycheck at the end of the day, like they would for some other leader, manager, or boss. Like
Right.
these guys were literally willing to do it, put their lives on the line in the process. The majority of them, writing their testimony in their own blood, giving their life.
They did.
And I think that type of loyalty only comes from the culture that gets developed, that atmosphere, of servant leadership, loyalty
Yeah.
towards one another, esteeming the needs of others is greater than your own. Doing that, with your clan, doing that with your family, doing that with your friends, it really
Hmm.
fosters that type of environment that a lot of people in the world are really after. When I go speak to these corporate groups and they want to know, how can I get my team to be a lot more like a SEAL team? We want that teamwork. We want that fraternity. Well, in the teams, we practice servant leadership, whether they recognize it comes from the scriptures or not. That's what we practice. It's always the team first, then your buddy, and then me.
I
The
thought you were
I
going
is
to
always
say you
last.
got to get them cold and wet and sandy or something like that. But no,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean that's another option, right? Let's go do some surf torture. We got to get some of
Oh
your
man.
people to quit. There's a lot of people here that probably don't belong here.
Oh, that would be
That doesn't
fun. We're
work
gonna
so
do
much in the
elimination.
corporate world, right? The HR department wouldn't be too stoked on that.
Oh yeah, I don't think you get invited back.
No.
Well, listen, I want to be really respectful of your time, and we found each other because I'm constantly trying to, feed not only my body the right kind of food, and spend time in the Word, but also feed my mind like leadership materials and looking around the world for other examples. Obviously, many to be found in the Bible, and the leadership principles of Jesus in the Bible are profound. That would be enough.
Mm.
But I did find your book, Seal of God. I know this is a little weird, that I have absolutely enjoyed. And it's kind of funny. I don't know. A lot of guys are like, I'm not really a reader. I was kind of that guy. And until I started digging in and really trying to strengthen myself. So I
Mhm.
enjoyed that a lot. And we'll talk about the book a little bit too. But I just, I was trying to figure out what would guys want to know. And
Mhm.
while we do have a huge piece of this that involves our faith as Christian men, and we talk about being leaders in the family and leaders at work and in our communities, and we have a PT component. I was like, well, I don't want to talk about. We could talk about different PT routines and just work your body hard and find something and go after it. But I thought, are there, as you have experienced and operated the highest levels of the military and the special forces and in that environment, and you've been intimately close with these operators and seen how they prepare, and then you've been able to take that and go out to major corporations and sit with CEOs and leaders of industry, and then examining your own life, you likely have identified some character traits or leadership notes or nuggets or takeaways. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there's probably some that you have in mind that when I look at high performing people who are leading well, um, you know, we tend to find people that are focused on these core things or do this. What can you speak to that?
Sure. I think some of the things that really rise to the top is, everything really starts off with, what is it that you're aiming at? There's that saying out there that if you aim at nothing, you will hit it. A lot of people kind of just go about their day, uh, kind of closing their eyes and pulling the trigger and just hoping it hits the target. And they don't know exactly what the target is. And I'll tell you what, that certainly doesn't work in combat. That's
Right.
why the enemy is very ineffective, right? They're typically taking a AK-47 and holding it up over a wall and just pulling the trigger, hoping that it touches something. And so in the teams, we've got this fundamental of shooting. And if you think about it, shooting has everything to do with goal setting. You have a goal, you have a target in your crosshairs you're trying to hit. And so this
Mhm.
fundamental of shooting, it goes like this: it's aim small, miss small. And the idea behind that isn't small thinking. The idea is that if I have an enemy insurgent that's bearing down on me or my team, and my goal is just to kind of put a round through him somewhere and I miss, what happens? So I don't touch my goal. I don't touch my target. It's a
Right.
miss. But if I say, you know what, my goal isn't just to try and hit him. What I'm trying to do is identify the third button down on his t shirt. So now I'm aiming very small, surgical here. The aim is small, and perhaps I miss. Perhaps I don't hit that third button down. I'm aiming small. My miss will be small, though, and I'll still find myself hitting that target, that goal that I'm going after. And so
Hmm.
remember, aim at nothing, you will hit it. It all starts off with, like, what is the vision that you're trying to capture? What is it that's in your crosshairs? And the more definition, the more clarity you could bring to whatever that is, have an aim small, the better shot you actually have of hitting that target. Perhaps you're a little bit off on your trajectory, but you'll still nail it. And so the first one really is just very intuitive, but it totally gets overlooked and passed over sometimes. It's goal setting, right? Aim small, miss small, and I
Well,
think then
and Chad, on that real quick, one of the first things we have guys doing strong like David is establish goals for the month. And we provide some guidance on that. I'm sure you've heard of the smarter method. But I say, let's don't say I want to lose weight or I want to become stronger
right,
this month. You say, I want to be able to do 15 pull-ups in a row over the next 30 days and then break down. I'm going to start with 3 today, 4 tomorrow. And that's kind of I never really thought about. That's actually just aiming small. It's like
right,
being really specific. It's not this broad target of fitness.
right.
It's doing 15 pull-ups in a row. That's
Yeah,
cool.
just kind of throwing it out there. I just want to lose weight is just kind of aiming at that enemy insurgent, hoping to hit him. Yeah, maybe. But if you say, like, my goal is 15 pull-ups within a certain amount of time, maybe you don't hit those 15 pull-ups, but guess what? You ultimately hit the bigger umbrella of you've probably lost some weight, in the
Mhm.
process, of
Right.
doing that.
There
Yeah,
you
and
go.
so that's great that you have that program for everyone because I think it's one of the most difficult things to figure out, right? It's
Mhm.
like I was directionless before I knew that I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And I really felt like I was living a wasted life because I'm not passing classes, going to a local community college. I had no passion for it. But once I had that in my crosshairs that this is what I want to do, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I felt like that was the most difficult part, was just figuring out what it is that I wanted to do. What am I aiming at? But from
That's
that point
awesome.
forward, everything was just a matter of now I've got the aim. It's just a matter of practical steps. It's just a
Right.
matter of stepping stones to get to that place now. And so I understand that feeling of just not even knowing what you're aiming at. It's a terrible place to be in.
Well,
And so it's a first order thing you got to get figured out.
and I don't want to give the book away, and I know you have some other stuff items to get onto, but I also like to remind guys that you could do that. You could have that vision and bring it into sharp focus, and then step out and immediately take a punch in the gut. One of the stories in your book is when you were called out to go on a jog with your mentor, and you got it wasn't a philosophical punch in the gut. And I don't want to spoil that story for him, but that's like, yes, I know what I want to do. Smackdown, like
Right.
how you like them apples.
It's so that's kind of the question, right? Like once you have your aim small, miss small, the big question is what type of man or woman is it that actually succeeds when it comes time to pull that trigger?
Hmm.
And I think that naturally just logically flows into the next principle that I share is it's the common man with uncommon desire to succeed. You are
Love
going to
it.
get punched in the gut along the way. There are going to be situations where you get knocked down. And so, are you that common man with uncommon desire to get back up and go for it? So, a lot of people have this misconception, I think, of, anyone that's a Navy SEAL must be an extraordinary man. Must be a guy just cut from another piece of cloth. They were
Hmm.
born and bred just another pedigree, right, to become this SEAL. When in reality, it couldn't be any further from the truth, from what I've observed. SEAL training, there's a whole melting pot of guys that show up. You got the stud athletes, and you got the guys that kind of just rolled off the couch one day and decided, I want to go for this. And so you really never know who's going to make it. You have your ideas. Like I remember looking around the classroom and seeing this guy and thinking, well, that guy's definitely going to make it. He's always in first place on every run and swim that we do. There's never a question over who's going to get first. It's him. The
Hmm.
question's over who's getting second. I'm looking at this other guy, Alex Gagne, the ugly duckling of the class. I mean, you could totally call him the David. David was like last to be picked, right? He wasn't even
Right.
consideration. When they're looking at, all the young men in the house of Jesse, they're like, is this it? This is all your sons? Well, there's one more out there
We
in the
got this
flock,
little one
but
out there. Yeah.
yeah, he's the runt. He's the ugly duckling. And so that was totally this guy, Alex Gagne. He was the just locker room talk. Like, not only is this guy going to quit, he's going to be the first guy to quit. But the irony of it all is that by the time we get to the most difficult part of training, Hell Week, who's amongst the first to quit? This guy, Barth, who everyone thought was going to make it for sure, the stud of the class, and who was one of the guys that ultimately made it through that pipeline, became a SEAL, Alex Gagne,
That's
the runt
awesome.
of the litter. And so what that demonstrates is the truth here of being a common man, but with uncommon desire to succeed. There are some extraordinary people out there that, they were just blessed with DNA. There's certain uncontrollable factors in life, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is that your DNA isn't what determines your destiny. And I see way too many people just kind of rolling over and accepting that belief nowadays, thinking that they're just the victim of their circumstances. This is the deck of cards they've been dealt in life, and they're
Right.
just kind of rolling with the punches and playing their part. That kind of
We see a
thinking
lot
is
of that today, man, where in all sorts of communities within our communities where they're just being told that it's not fair
right.
and
Oh yeah,
people are holding you down and you don't have a chance, and that is toxic. I mean,
it is.
there's this I watched this movie For Love of the Game with Costner, and it's an old baseball movie. It was late, I couldn't get to sleep, I found it, and he injures his hand in the movie, and there's this trainer that kind of implies he's not going to get better, and he goes, get out of my face. You come back tomorrow with the right attitude, I'm gonna get better. And I don't want to be surrounded by people who are kicking off negative vibes or being pessimistic. And I was like, that's powerful stuff too, who you surround yourself with.
It's a cop out to say
Yeah.
that, the reason I'm not successful is because I wasn't born in the same household. I didn't get the same privileges as this person did over there, or whatever it is. The reality is that there are people in life that might get a better start. But
Hmm.
especially in a place like America, this is a place where you literally could get the best start of all at the top. But if
Right.
you don't have the heart, the mindset, the desire to hang on to what you have, you can find yourself at the bottom. And
Quickly.
you can start off at the bottom. And the privilege stuff is not the most important stuff. It's not the determining factor. DNA, like we've noticed with this guy Barth, it doesn't determine destiny. What is it
Right.
that really determines where you're going? It's the desire in your heart,
Right.
being a
Right. Right.
common man, uncommon desire to succeed. And don't we see that in the life of David? What was
Yeah.
unique about David? Well, it says that he had a heart after God's own heart.
Hmm.
And what does God say about the heart aspect of things? Well, speaking of David in First Samuel, I think it's 16:7. He talks about how, from his perspective, God's perspective, he says, "For I don't see as man sees." For man
That's
looks
right.
at the outward appearance, but I look at the heart. And
Hmm.
so, where's your heart? Where is your desire? There's also a passage in Second Chronicles 16 that it talks about how the eyes of the Lord go to and fro throughout the whole earth to do what? Show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are loyal towards him. And
Right.
so, whatever your past resume is, it doesn't matter. Whatever your past failures are, it doesn't matter. Maybe you got a bad starting point in life, that doesn't matter. The
Hmm.
determining factor here is your desire. And so, the type of person that succeeds when it comes time to pull that trigger is the
Right.
type of person that's that common man with uncommon desire to succeed. And so that's the real
Good
big
stuff.
emphasis moving forward from aim small, miss small, common man, uncommon desire to succeed. And I guess we could talk about getting into adversity too. So yeah,
Hmm.
you are going to get punched in the stomach along the way, and you have to have, I think, a certain perspective on adversity.
Right.
So adversity is kind of like a tsunami that's going to invade your life. We've all faced adversity to some degree. You don't make it this far in life where you're watching this right now and say you've never faced uncontrollable circumstances that have ran you over. All right.
Hmm.
And so the other thing that we have to come to grips with is like accept it. There's going to be more. It's
Right.
not a matter of if, it's when it's imminent. We are going to get hit with bad news. Something is not going to go the way that you thought it should. And so that's why I say this is like a tsunami or a hurricane that just invades your life. And so if
Hmm.
you can't control the fact that you are going to face adversity, do you just
Right.
roll over and play dead? No, because you do still have control over something, the most important factor in that. And what is that? You control the way that you respond. You ultimately are the determiner of whether or not that adversity will be what we could call a wing or a weight. Will you allow it to be a weight that just sinks you, leaves you knocked down, never to get back up again? Like people
Right.
see what that guy got hit with and they go, yeah, he's not resurfacing from that one. Or do you
Right.
find a wing in the moment somehow, which is just really a way to rise to the occasion in this moment? So this is how we deal with it in the SEAL teams. This is right out of our SEAL creed. It's one of the first lines. It says forged by adversity. That's
Hmm.
the way I look at adversity. Is this is the fiery furnace, the heat is turned up right now, and I am that metal, but I'm going to be forged by this. I'm being molded into something by this. I'm not going to fail by adversity. I'm being forged by it. And
Right.
I think the adversity that we go through in life truly is the stuff that shapes us. It truly is the stuff that makes us or breaks us. You are the determiner, though, of whether or not you will be forged into like a sort of make or be broken by it. I love this
Well,
quote. It's an anonymous one, and so I can't attribute it to anybody, but I heard it and it's like,
huh?
man, that was worth reading on a daily basis and got it kind of put to memory. It goes like this. It says, when God wants to drill a man and thrill a man and skill a man, when God wants to mold a man to play the noblest part, when he yearns with all his heart to create so great and bold a man that all the world should be amazed, watch his methods and watch his ways, how he ruthlessly perfects whom he royally elects, how he hammers him and hurts him and with mighty blows converts him into trial shapes of clay, which only God understands. While man's tortured heart is crying and he lifts beseeching hands, how God bends, but he never breaks when it's man's good that he undertakes, and how he uses whom he chooses, and with every purpose fuses him, by every act induces him to try his splendor out. God knows what he is about. And so, God, in the lives
Boom.
of men, men like David, he's trying out his splendor, and
Hmm.
sometimes that hammer and chisel comes out, and we are the one being sculpted here, and he's chipping away, and chunks are coming off. And we're like, ow, that really hurt right there. What are you up
Right.
to? And all you have to know is this, just trust that the master sculptor has an image in mind. God knows what he is about in that process. And you just need to constantly be looking for how could it be forged in this process? Where am I going to find the wing in the moment here? And doing anything other than that is literally just standing still, which standing still is going backwards, or you're just
Hmm.
flat out going to be going backwards and you're just a liability.
Well, we talk about not so much the challenges. I mean, there are those that you'll face throughout the month with Strong Like David, but one of the things we say is that at the end of the day, when you're conducting your evening routine, we talk about how we conduct our morning routine and kick ourselves off in a meaningful way, spin around, get your feet on the deck, get up, move. And then at the end of the day, bring it in for a landing, very purposefully. But part of that strategy is going into your field guide and filling out our sit rep, our situation report. And I encourage guys, I'm like, hey, make sure you take note of the failures because it's actually right in that failure that the lesson is sitting waiting for you to pluck, right? It's that
Mm,
challenge you had during the day. And it might have been a challenge with your fitness routine or with your diet or meeting a goal. But whatever's existing in that spot is actually showing up in other areas of your life, right?
mm,
It's the chink in your armor that you might need to look a little closer at. Don't gloss over it. And
right.
so it's kind of cool the idea of becoming stronger in those mistakes, in those challenges, in those tsunamis.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
No
have to record.
operation ever goes
I'm watching
exactly
this
as
later,
planned.
typing that out, man. I love
Yeah.
that quote. That was awesome.
Yeah. And so after every operation, we got an after action, report we throw together, and every SEAL team that has deployed, when, they're passing the baton off to the next team, they get a
Mm,
full booklet of, here's all of our operations on this deployment. Here's all of our lessons learned, just so that we can sort of push you forward. Right. And so we're all standing
that's
on the
great.
shoulders, of others, and learning. I've learned the most, I would say, by far, not by successes. It's always been, the failures in so many
Hmm.
different things. That's where you really sit back and go, okay, where's the blind spot here? Where's the gap that I need to fill? Why did that not go the way that I wanted it to? And you see, this is so true in the lives of so many athletes out there. I think of
Right.
like plenty of mixed martial artists that, have a nearly perfect record, but they learn so much more just from that one loss. They'll
Hmm.
say that one loss is the thing that, I wouldn't be the guy I am today without it. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of situations like that. So you lean into those moments. Absolutely. The
Good
next
stuff.
principle would be one that we kind of touched on, which would be, servant leadership. I think
Mhm.
that we hit that pretty good.
Yeah.
Just always esteeming the needs of others as greater than your own, investing to those people around you. I think it's a greater way to live your life, anyways. Instead
Right.
of asking, what can I get out of this situation? I mean, we live in one of the most narcissistic times where everyone's working on their own brand. And, you ask them why they're going after this goal or doing that. And they say, I'm working on me. I hate to hear that, because I know that'll never be enough,
Mm-mm.
in the end. And
Yeah.
so,
You will be hungry.
that's right. And so, being that servant leader, it's a greater way to live your life. It's something really worth waking up to. I really do believe that it is greater to give, than to receive. It's far more rewarding. And then
Awesome.
another principle would be one that comes out of our creed, and it goes like this: earn your trident every day. And so the trident is that thing that you put so much blood, sweat, tears, hard work, determination towards, obtaining, right? That's the
Hmm.
pinnacle of SEAL training. This is the insignia that gets pinned into your chest that says, welcome to the brotherhood. You are a SEAL. Welcome to the family. But what you quickly learn is to earn your trident every day. In other words, you don't rest on your laurels. And
Hmm.
so maybe some of these guys that are watching right now are coming off a great year in business, right? 2021 has, been good to them. Maybe they've been the employee of the month. They're experiencing this sort of mountaintop experience, and that's
Hmm.
great. Eat it up, take it in, enjoy, but don't rest on your laurels. Don't
Right.
coast. Don't think that whatever it took to get you to that place is necessarily going to continue to work. We need to strive for innovation. That's what earning your trident every day is. If in the SEAL teams, I'm relying on tactics that maybe I learned a year ago to go and fight
Hmm.
an enemy today, well, that's a great way to get killed on the battlefield. Why? Because I'm dealing with an enemy that's constantly evolving, adapting, and becoming more sophisticated. And so we
Right.
need to be earning our trident every day, striving for that innovation, coming up with more advanced tactics, looking at those blind spots. Why did something not go right? In that operation right there, how can we make this better? And so
Yeah.
hopefully the guys out there, whenever they're asked, why is it that you do things the way that you do it? Hopefully you're not the kind of guy that says, I do it this way because that's the way I've always done it. I mean, that's a great way to
Right.
get killed on the battlefield. And we all know the dinosaurs aren't around anymore. And it wasn't for lack of strength. They were quite the creature,
Right.
but they lacked an ability to adapt to
Right.
their surrounding environment. All right. And so we're dealing with what? A consumer world out there that's constantly changing. We're dealing with an
Hmm.
economy that's constantly changing. We're dealing with, this is a situation where we got a virus that's constantly changing,
Yeah.
all around us. And
Right.
so just trying to coast along and think that, yeah, whatever I did last year that worked is going to work this year. That's a great plan for failure right there. That's a
That's good
failure to
stuff.
plan in
Don't sit
advance. So earn
still.
that trident every day, guys. And then the next would be an ability to control your emotions and actions regardless of the circumstances. And I'll just tell you, there's
Mm.
no shortcut, there's no pill you could take for
That
this one.
sounds tough.
It comes from, I think, prior experience. And I think
Man.
that there's a lot of opportunities where guys had a chance to learn a lesson maybe from a life experience and they never learned it. So what do they got to do? They got to go back and relearn it. And
Hmm.
so that ability to control your emotions and actions regardless of circumstances, just try and think about how when things really hit the fan, it's important for me to maintain control of my emotions and actions, because if not for myself, other people are looking to me. You
Right.
are a leader. At the very least, you are a leader of yourself, but you are the type of person that will either be a liability or an asset. You're either going to
Mhm.
be a sheep dog, or you're going to be just a sheep that has to be taken care of. And
Right.
so the thing is that that's all important for a whole myriad of reasons. Let me just
Mhm.
focus in on one. In the teams, we talk about how that calmness is very contagious. Like you'll be one that sets the tone. A good example of this would be go back to 9/11. All right,
Mhm.
before we knew that this was an attack, right, from Al Qaeda, we got airplanes that are going into buildings. I don't even think the news had hit the president yet. And where was the president that day? He was at a school, and he's there. It was planned to, read some books to the children, take a little tour. And as always, there's media that's going to be following the president around. And the thing is now is that we could go back and look at that media and pinpoint the very moment that
Oh
Andy
yeah.
Card comes walking across a classroom
Says
and whispers into the president's ear. We know what those infamous words are now. Like, what did he say?
yes.
He told him, Mr. President, America is under attack. The way he responded in those following moments, he's been highly criticized by some, but I think
Mhm.
it makes absolute perfect sense, especially considering the leadership position that he was in that moment, because people expected him to show some type of emotion. At the very least, don't you care? Show a quiver of the chin. There should be some tears rolling down your cheeks right now, or just something.
Mm.
Instead, he had this sort of calmness, which to them was sickening, and they've come up with all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories like maybe this was something he already knew was going to happen, and he was
Oh,
just getting the word right. And so just
right.
crazy stuff like that. Looking back, he explains exactly what was going on in that moment. He says, look, just like every other American out there, of course I've got these feelings welling up. I'm thinking, who would do this to us, right? He's just
Mhm.
like any other human being, red-blooded male out there. But unlike every other American, he made the point, that I am the leader of our nation. I am the commander in chief. And my nation, the rest of the world is looking at me right now. Because what he picked up on in the fly in that moment, say what you will about President Bush, but he picked up on this in this moment, that there's all this commotion going on behind those cameras right now. That as he
Mhm.
got this word from Andy Card, he sees just all kinds of moving around, phones going off. He realizes they are getting the same information that I just received, and they have their cameras pointed at me right now. And I, as the leader of our nation, am being broadcasted to every household and my enemy out there. He
Right.
realized how important it was to maintain control of his emotions and actions regardless of the circumstances. Could you imagine if he would have just collapsed in that moment, fallen to his knees, and shown this sort of vulnerability and weakness? What would that say to our enemies out there? What would
Right.
that do to the fabric of our society, right? As they see their leader falling apart at the seams before them, I think it would
Mhm.
cause mass hysteria. I mean, there would be
Right.
pandemonium in the streets. But instead, he had this calmness, and I would say that calmness was contagious. It gave people confidence that we are going to get through this. And guess what?
Mhm.
Tears did come eventually, but it was when the
Right.
cameras weren't pointed at him. He shares how when
Right.
he went up there on Air Force One, that's when he took that moment. But you
Mhm.
see how important it is. And so when things really hit the fan, and again, maybe dad, you get bad news. Who's going to look to you? Your spouse, your children are going to look to you. Dad, how do we deal with this right now? How do we respond in this moment? Or your coworkers, right? How are we
Mhm.
going to get through this? If you're just running around like a chicken with its head cut off, you're that liability. You're making things worse. But if
Right.
you have this sort of
Yeah.
calmness about you, you realize how important that is. Now you've become an asset to everybody around you. It doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get out of this ambush alive. But at least what it does, I think it sets up the best possible preconditions for getting out of a situation like that, because everyone around you is going to function a whole lot better when they have that calmness about them. And
Yeah.
so that
Well, it's one of
ability
the
to
things that
control.
taught us as a young corpsman in the Navy was, when you have something dramatic occur in your unit and they're saying corpsman up,
Yeah.
that you should get there, but stay calm, talk
Right.
slow, walk, methodically move through your evaluation, and they know Doc has this, and they could get
Right.
back in the fight. They don't stay there and try and help you because you so clearly are calm and in control. They get back to what they need to be doing. Even inside,
Right.
if you're going like, "Oh my gosh, this is a
Yeah.
mess."
I mean, if
Just
they have a massive gash on their head where you could literally see their cranium, are you
yeah.
supposed to run up to them and be like, "Oh no," what is that going to do to that person? No. When they say, "Tell me, what does it look like? What's going on?" You go,
It's a scratch, man. It's a
"Nothing,
scratch.
man. Yeah, might take one stitch. You're totally going to be fine." Inside, you're thinking, "Wow,"
Whoa.
right? Like this
His
guy's
modeling
skull
career
is
is
showing
over.
right now. Yeah, exactly. Because what does that do to that person? It's going to cause total panic. I literally, that exact situation just happened a few years ago. We're playing a game, underwater football. It's something I picked up in the teams. I've shared it with some other guys. A guy got hit in the head, and I mean, just head cracked open. He's looking at me like, "Chad, how's it look?" I'm like, "It's nothing, man. You're gonna be totally
Nothing.
fine." One of the other guys swims up and just loses it, all right, and then sends this
You're like,
guy into,
hey, come
yeah,
on, help
quite
me
the
here.
scare. It's like you don't do that, right?
Oh gosh, I love it. That's awesome.
Um, the final one worth sharing, I think, with everybody, and there's a couple of ways I present it. One is like the last line of our SEAL creed. It goes like this: "In the worst of conditions, I'll rely upon the legacy of those who have gone before me to steady my resolve to guide my every deed." And so when I'm about to go face a situation where I've had this talk from the Master Chief before we go out, like, "Hey, boys, no guarantees everyone comes back home alive or all in one piece on this one. All
Mm,
right, we're going to go face some worst of conditions right now. What am I to do?" To get fired up, to get focused on the mission, what I do is I don't think about self. I rely upon the legacy of those that have gone before me. I
mhm.
reflect back and remember the stories of guys like Michael Monsoor, who jumped on a hand grenade and sacrificed his own life to save the lives of others. Everyone else lived because of what he did, but he gave his life. And so it's the greatest act of love. Greater love is known than this one that lays on his life for his friends. You think about
Yeah,
Jesus, how in a sense he jumped on that hand grenade. He didn't
right,
absorb the blast of a hand grenade, he absorbed the wrath of our sin upon himself. He covered that. Why? So that we could live on with him in eternity. And so I'm fired up. I'm motivated when I think about the legacy of those that have gone before me in the worst of conditions. That's the type of thing that really steadies my resolve. So that's
right.
one way to look at it, right? Steady your resolve by thinking back on legacy or even leaving a legacy. Or another way to put it is that just before you enter into Hell Week, which is supposed to be the most difficult week of training, this is the week that's going to take out the majority of the class.
Mhm.
The instructors let you write on the inside of your hat. And so you have your hat and they give you these white felt markers and they want you to write on the inside of your hat some things are going to motivate you to dig deep when the going gets tough. And so I remember kind of scribbling some things down on my hat and I'm looking around the room at other guys and we're all kind of sharing with each other what we're writing on our hats to look for some inspiration. The thing I
Mhm.
never saw on the inside of anybody's hat, we address this, is their own name. We live in one of the most selfish, narcissistic times, and we need to get away from that because nobody had their own name written on the inside of their hat. It's just not enough when the going gets tough. You need to reach outside of yourself. The common
Mhm.
theme I saw on the inside of people's hats that made it through training, and this is
Right.
what was on my hat, and I still have my hat to this day. I actually just busted it out and shared it with a college group last night. I was sharing this
Awesome.
point with them. It's faith, family, and friends. I literally had a scripture on the inside of my hat. I had the word family just huge on the inside of my hat. And my thinking on that was, you know, this isn't supposed to be over till about Friday evening. There's no way my family's getting a phone call from me on a Tuesday or a Wednesday when they should not be hearing from me, telling
Wow.
them, "Hey, I quit. Hey, I didn't make it." Like, I rather die than have that conversation. And
Yeah.
so as I just really absorbed that, I'd rather die than have that conversation. I'm not having that conversation. That's not
Mhm.
happening no matter what. There's no way. And so
Right.
I'm either going out of here, like on my shield or with it, right? Like with my
Right.
shield in hand, I made it, or I'm going off on a stretcher. But that phone conversation is not happening. I'd rather die than have that conversation.
That's
So
right.
faith, family, and then friends. I had my mentor, Scott Helvinston, who,
Mhm.
man, this guy was like a second father to me. And he was just the last conversation I had with him. Little did we know it would be our last. He's telling me, "Junior, I know you're going to make it through SEAL training." And tragically, he was one of these contractors with Blackwater back in 2004 that was killed, and they hung him upside down from the bridge and they videotaped all these awful things. And so I had his name on the inside of my hat as just this constant reminder. and a motivation. I'm not quitting on that name right there.
Mm-mm.
And so my big
Man,
takeaway, I guess, if you will, in this final point, is the challenge to all the men that are part of your program is, have it determined in your mind going forward before you rest your head on your pillow tonight, and maybe write this on a hat.
mm-hmm.
Have it determined in your mind, what is it that you guys would write on the inside of your hats? I think
Right.
that's one of the most powerful pieces right there. And so
That's
remember what
awesome.
it all starts off with, right? It starts with a goal. Aim small, miss small. What's the type of man that actually succeeds when he's pulling that trigger? Common man, uncommon desire to succeed. You're going to face adversity along the way. Hey, we're forged by adversity. Being a servant leader is it's going to create that teamwork, that family dynamic all around you. It's just a better way to get up in the morning and live your life.
That's right.
Earning your trident, not just once, right? It's earn that trident every day, striving for innovation, demonstrating that ability to control emotions and actions regardless of circumstances when things hit the fan, and then just have it determined in your mind, what is it that you would write on the inside of your hat. So there it is right there.
That's good
Those are the
stuff.
things that I think bubble to the surface worth sharing.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate the fact that you've come, and spent this time with us. And and I know you experience this in your ministry and in your business and through your book and through speaking engagements. But I know that when men watch this in the program, that it's going to inspire and motivate them. So I really, that's all I want to do. My wife asked me sometimes, and my business partner and other people, like, what are you doing with this thing? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing with this thing. I just feel like there's a vacuum and there's a hunger, right? And if the world's gonna feed men something, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, let's go. Let's get our act together. Let's focus and lead strong and home. And there's so much here to take away. And I just really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Iron sharpens iron. Let the sparks fly.
You got it. Hey, thanks. I need to get a link from you for this book. I want to make sure I send it to the right place. And if there's ever anything that we can do for you, please let me know. It'd be an honor.
Thank you. Appreciate it
All
very
right. Thanks,
much.
man.
You guys have a good one.